Yeah, definitely used to. Okay, great. Hey, team, what is happening? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Thomas Rowe, co-founder of Blueprint to Blue Chip, with my host and co-founder Aaron Sarles. And today we're with Craig Bueller again. This is our second week in a row. We've come up with a new webinar called 15 Minutes of Fame. We understand, we respect your time. What we want you to do is tune in, drop us some questions about mental mindset. Again, this is our second week. We want to keep this webinar going because we're starting to get a lot of insight. We're starting to get a lot of feedback, positive feedback about it. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Craig. Craig, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you both. Good to see you in the same room. Nice change of things. So Craig Bueller, originally from Detroit, Michigan. Background is in psychology, with a degree from the University of Michigan, as well as a master's degree in sports psychology from the University of Illinois in Chicago. So through my work, I've had experience with Division I women's tennis, women's soccer, professional rugby. And really what I'm trying to achieve is to work with athletes to not only enhance their performance, but to provide them with the flexible mindsets that help them thrive throughout their lives. So looking not only at their athletic career, but also beyond that, who they want to be as a human, as a person, and as a leader. So I'm really just, again, happy to be back and look forward to some of these questions that were great last week.
Excellent. So, team, to give you a little background of how Blueprint to Blue Chip came about, and I think it's important to understand this background or this backstory, and that is I've been a strength and conditioning coach now, sports performance, working with high school, college, and pro athletes on the off season for now 20, 25 years. And when I first met Erin, one of the things she mentioned was, wow, you really focus on bigger, faster, stronger. But what about the mental mindset? What about the athlete once they're done playing sports? And my response, knee jerk, was pretty selfish and arrogant by saying, that's not my job. And she said, it should be your job. So Erin and I worked closely for the last 2 years, developed Blueprint to Blue Chip. And how Craig comes into the equation is Craig, as you mentioned, is an expert in mental mindset, because we have seen a lot of athletes who have tremendous amount of physical presence. But what about the mental aspect, and how that could take it to the next stage? There was a fantastic book that I read years ago called Mind Gym by Mac and Stevens. And I think it was Arnold Palmer that said the toughest course I ever played was the one between my ears. So that just goes to show how important the mental mindset is. So what I'm going to do right here at this point is, and forgive us, team, I'm working from my home office. My internet's down, so we're working off of Aaron's hotspots. That's why we're here. Maybe none of you notice or none of you care, but let's get into the very first question. Craig, I've been called talented my whole life, and now I'm at a program where everyone's talented. For the first time, I'm not the best, and I don't know how to handle it. I feel like an imposter. How do I develop growth mindset when I'm questioning even if I even belong here?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Again, that's the danger of these labels that we either get from our parents, coaches, different officials of like, oh, you're talented, you have potential, you have the ability to do great things. Like, while it's well intended, I'm sure that can come, at a later cost when all of a sudden you realize there's performers that are stronger than you, faster than you, quicker than you, and you realize you're not as talented, or you're maybe not as good as you once thought you were. So really trying to understand the labels that we give ourselves or that coaches give ourselves, and recognizing that, but also being flexible in the sense that we as humans are more than just our performance. We are capable of doing more things that go beyond performance. So when someone tells me I'm talented, like, that's fantastic, but I'm also flexible in my mindsets that that's a transient state. I don't need to just be limited to my performance. I don't need to be judged on the outcome of my performance. So really developing that growth mindset of being adaptable in how we perceive ourselves, and paying attention to those narratives that are either self-implemented or given by coaches and parents. So really being flexible in paying attention to that and moving towards developing a diversified sense of self.
Can I dig a little deeper and ask
Yeah.
How do you kind of do that? So like, I think of I have a 16-year-old. It's like you tell them they're talented, or I'm proud of, because you want them to know, I think as a parent,
Right.
that they're awesome in my eyes. I mean, I'm their mom, but how do I help them develop that fluidity of that's just one lens or one perspective. And it's true, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Right. Right. I think it just comes from, this effort-based communication of not like, oh, you got the win, or oh wow, look at the score you shot, but more so like look at the effort you put into, look at the qualities that you brought along the way you treated your teammates, the way you handled this tough moment. So looking more at this effort based, something that comes from within their control, and say like, hey, like that was really strong how you present yourself on the golf course, being able to come back from that bogey and still keep your head up like that. Talking about how that applies in other aspects of their lives, whether it's in school or their job. So trying to connect the dots as to look at these skills that you displayed, some of the things that you kind of more so controlled versus the outcome, and trying to communicate like, hey, how does this, work in other areas of interest that you have? So trying to focus on the effort, focus on those behaviors that they control, and then trying to explore like where does this attach to other areas of your life. So not just focusing on, wow, you're the best, or, oh, wow, look at the way you closed down the side in the baseball game. More so like, look at the effort you brought and the way you treated yourself and your teammates.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's great. One of the stories I like to share with families, and I don't think I shared this with you, Craig. When I lived out in Los Angeles for 25 years, the pulse of the city is entertainment. So you're going to see a lot of actors and models and aspiring singers. And I remember one time I was in a room with a friend of mine who was a casting director, and just one person after the other was just beautiful. And the casting director turned to me and said, these are the people that have been told their entire life, you're so beautiful, you should be an actor or a model, you should be an actor or a model. Then they get in the room where everybody's been told they should be an actor or a model. So now these people are starting to question who they are, because they start looking around the room and they go, wow, they have longer hair, they have tanner skin, they have a better complexion, right? So I think that kind of happens with athletes, where you could be a big fish in a little pond getting recruited out of a high school, let's say in middle America. You end up at Nebraska, or you end up at a Michigan or Ohio State, and everybody's great. So you're not used to earning your stripes and riding the pine, right? So my next question kind of blends into that, and that is, everyone says focus on the process, not the outcome. But I'm trying to get recruited, and outcomes are literally all that matters. Scouts look at stats, wins, and championships. How am I supposed to focus on the process when my future depends on the outcomes?
Yeah, it's always the tough question, and especially in sport, like it's outcome driven, it's performance driven, whether you're a player or a coach. Like at the end of the day, you do need to get these outcomes. At the end of the day, if I'm trying to get recruited for tennis, like I do need to beat my opponent. So I do need to get these wins. The question is like whether it's not good or bad, but is it helpful? Is it helpful
Right.
for you as a performer to stress about the outcome, or to stress about whether a coach got back to you over an email? More so thinking about the thing we actually have ownership of. So what is our process in sending out emails to coaches, or what is our process in training for today? Where is our focus for today? So keeping in mind, yeah, the outcomes do matter. And how do I increase my probability of getting there? It's by focusing on this process. So it's more of a yes and understanding like what are the payoffs of me thinking about the outcomes versus what are the costs of me stressing about the outcomes, and ultimately working with athletes and having them kind of grow that awareness surrounding the relationship towards that, helps expand a more efficient and flexible process. So that's where I would go.
Awesome. Awesome. This next one is pretty interesting. I'm on a team that's losing. I can control my individual performance, but I can't
Yeah.
control whether we win. How do I stay motivated to focus on the process when the outcome, losing, is out of my control and it's destroying team morale?
Yeah, definitely not fun. Definitely affects the team. Like I said, team morale. Um, Emotions are often contagious. So if everyone's down, you're likely going to be down. It's more so of, okay, well, here's the conditions. Here's what's not working. Again, like these qualities, like what can I bring as a leader, as a teammate, to make the most of what we can actually control? Like, how are we going to focus today? What are some things we can try differently? How can we maybe work with coach to develop different tactics? So really looking at acknowledging what's there. Again, like the outcomes, like, yes, it's not ideal, but at the same time, like what's going on with our process? Do we have to step back and change the way we're focusing in our practice or our tactics? And how do we develop a new system or a different system to really make change in a positive direction. So again, looking at those qualities you're bringing, as well as what are some things we can try differently or look at differently. So taking that kind of growth mindset as well.
Perfect. Perfect. This is interesting one. And Craig, I'd love to know your insight on the pitfalls or the blessing and curse of social media. Craig, my identity on social media is 100% athlete. Every post, every story, everything is about my sport. If I post about anything else, I lose engagement. How do I build an identity beyond sports when my entire online presence is built on being an athlete?
Hmm. Yeah, it's tough, definitely depending on the context. Like, I don't know what level they're at or if they're being paid to do this or whatever it might be. But on Instagram, like that's just one aspect. If you're the athlete, Susan, the athlete on Instagram, okay, that's great. That's kind of your focus there. What about Susan, the chef on a blog, or Susan, the friend of connecting socially with different people in your community? So kind of thinking about what are some other aspects of my life and how can I put focus onto that, whether it is doing things differently on a blog or creating a website with your different interests. But it's more so, yeah, recognizing Instagram, okay, that's my space for my athletic aspect. What about other avenues for myself to express other interests? So it's keeping those in mind and understanding I don't have to be held to just one avenue of my identity. There's multiple ways to go about it.
That's awesome. That's one of the things that we try to. Can you imagine an athlete now trying to manage 5, 6, 7 platforms to where
Crazy.
you just might want to find two, like Instagram is just for sports, TikTok is for family and friends, and then kind of leave it
Yep.
at that. And then you could almost toggle split personality in a fun way by saying, in announcing that to your audience, hey guys, listen, I appreciate you coming here on Instagram for all my athletic endeavors, but I also have a TikTok page that just talks about me as a student, as a, somebody who enjoys doing volunteer work, or, my family and friends, and then vice versa. So people know what they're getting. And I could imagine how it would mess with your psyche if you're an athlete and you're getting, let's say, 200 likes and 80 comments. And then when you post, at a birthday party, you get very little engagement.
Right.
And I think your identity is wrapped up in that way. I would think it would be better just separated. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's cool. It reminds me of, well, a couple of different athletes, but like Peter O'Mahony, so an Irish rugby player, like big time, big dude. But on Instagram, he has a page dedicated to like his passion of landscaping. So like his garden, his backyard, and that's kind of his space to like represent his work. So it's kind of a nice creative output or outlet for him. And I think that's a good use of social media. I mean, I think we're on the same page of like the cost of social media, but I think in this aspect, it's cool that athletes can kind of talk about more than just their performances, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, and use that as a medium to display like, hey, I'm more than an athlete. Here's some of these other things that I'm interested in, and kind of seeking engagement through that.
Awesome. Awesome. This
Yeah.
is a great question. The more people expect from me, the worse I perform. When nobody's expecting anything like practice, I'm great. But when my coaches, parents, scouts are watching and expecting me to dominate during a game, I choke. How do I handle external expectations without letting them crush me?
That's the tough part. Definitely expectations from others is difficult because your parents, that matters to you, your coaches, that matters to you, and often like people we love, we have high expectations for. So it's hard to balance that, and oftentimes the pressure to kind of cater to those expectations gets in the way of our enjoyment of the actual match. So it starts with recognizing like what are the expectations that other people are putting on you, and then okay, that's great. How do we recognize that and turn our focus again on this process of what are our own expectations? More importantly, like what are my own standards? How do I want to show up today and not let the worry or the fear of not rising to these expectations from an external source get in the way of my enjoyment of why I actually want to play my sport? So again, it's sitting down and recognizing like here are the expectations, turning towards and pivoting. Well, what are my standards? What are my values today? And how do I make the most of it?
Perfect.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I think it's important to distinguish, or
It's hard.
kind of, it is hard. It's like almost like, what are your expectations? And are your expectations or
Mhm.
standards greater than the coach or the parents. So you're like the person you'd be letting down if you let somebody down, which again, that's your mind, is you, not them, So it's like, how do you
Mhm.
bring that where the expectations are yours and you set the external people aside? Because I think that becomes very challenging.
Yep. Yep. I agree.
Awesome. So, Craig, thanks so much for being patient with us, doing this dance to try and get,
Talk about flexibility. We gotta, use the right mindsets to make the most of it.
team, we're at our 15-minute mark, but, we still have questions rolling in. Craig, if you have time, we have time. We would just love to field a few more because we really want to build an audience. Are you okay on time?
Yeah, I'm good for about 5 more, if that works.
Perfect. That sounds great. Team, thanks so much for accommodating and being patient with me and Aaron. Again, I'm just going to mention for the audience that my internet's down. This is why we're kind of doing this little dance. We had the choice of, the show must go on even regardless of, this little dance. Craig, I'm really excited to get this question to you because this actually hit close to home for me. And that is except it was my younger brothers. My older sibling was a star athlete, and everyone expects me to be just as good as they are or better. The pressure of living up to their legacy is suffocating. How do I handle being compared to someone else's success when I'm just trying to figure out my own path?
Yeah, definitely challenging. And I think it's kind of similar to the last question of these expectations from others. So, yeah, my older brother, my older sister was really good. Now there's this expectation that I should be as good, if not better. So, again, it's recognizing what your mind's telling you, what stories are coming, like, oh, you got to be better than your brother, you got to be as good as your sister. And again, paying attention to like, I'm worth enough just as I am as a human. So it's really kind of coming from that inner coach, that self-compassion, and turning towards like, okay, what do we actually have ownership of? Because we don't have control over what others think of us, how others evaluate us, but we do control how we treat ourselves and the ways in which we want to go about our work. So some of the expectations definitely very tough, but ultimately it's about what do I actually care about and what are my processes and how do I focus on what I actually can control.
Yeah. I'm going to build on that, team. Just from personal experience. I was a college and high school athlete. My brothers were college and high school athletes. My brothers are 6'6" and I'm 6'2". And people are like, wow, what happened to you? And I was like, what do you mean what happened to me? And then my brothers were able to go on to college and they ended up blocking for Marshall Faulk, who was a 2-time Heisman Trophy runner up and then went into the NFL Super Bowl champion MVP. So Mark and Matt got a lot of eyes on them. How I was able to deflect that and kind of find myself as I went into a different sport, right? Mark and Matt were in football. I was in football. Then I carved out a path for myself in triathlons and endurance races where Mark and Matt couldn't compete with me. And I was able to get my own identity. So hopefully that helps if you can find a different identity. One of the things I talk about with my friends, Craig, and you can jump in here on this. Can you imagine being Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf's son or daughter? I probably wouldn't pick up a tennis racket. I mean, when that's your parents. So what are your thoughts on that as far as following in the footsteps of yeah.
It's like Charlie Woods, Tiger Woods' kid, obviously, but it's tough because right from the womb, like there's an expectation, like you're going to be as good as your parent or whatever it might be. So really it's tough. And that's where the work comes in of doing some, foundational, just beginning to understand like, hey, I don't need the expectations or the opinions of others to weigh on me or of who I am, not only as a performer, but, a human. Like I'm enough as this human. So really helping them sit down and understand like their identity, they are more than the expectations or perspective of others, and really helping them recognize their own inherent self-worth. So it's really it's difficult because again, there's going to always be expectations. There's always going to be comparison, and you got to really help support them and understand like, hey, like, yeah, your parents were maybe really elite at their sport, but that doesn't mean you have to be. So helping them find their own sense of value and also their diversified identities, whether it is in sport or something else.
Perfect. Team, if you see the phone in my hand, I'm not disrespecting you by scrolling through social media or my phone. This is actually how I'm fielding the questions. I don't think anyone cares, but I just thought I would throw that out there. Craig, I made a huge mistake in a playoff game that cost us the championship. It went viral on social media. Everyone knows, everyone saw. I'm humiliated and I don't know how to show my face again. How do you come back from public failure when everyone's watching?
That's a good question as well. It's difficult. So, I mean, it will take time because the intensity of those emotions that come along with it, I would imagine are fairly intense. So it's really working with them to develop a high quality relationship with those emotions, as unpleasant as they might be. So instead of trying to avoid the anxiety or the shame or the regret, it's more so working and inviting in those emotions, accommodating them, and trying to really just listen and notice what your mind and your body are telling you. Like, what are these emotions trying to communicate, and just responding effectively to them so that you can eventually pivot your focus to the present of these qualities, and who you want to be and who you want to go on from there, because one failure isn't an indicator of who you are as a person. So moving on from that eventually, and again, it takes time because that's not the best feeling in the world. So it's being able to sit with that experience and to slowly move on and to pivot towards, again, those values and the next performance, because there is going to be another opportunity to make something happen.
Sure. You're a Michigan guy. Do you remember when Chris Webber
I wasn't born yet, but yes. Yeah, I'm aware.
Okay, that's enough of the show, team. I'm just showing my age because I
got a better one for you. It's the kid Straw in Rose Bowl a couple of years ago when he almost muffed the punt against Alabama. Like, thankfully he didn't end up muffing it, but there was like a few seconds in there where he almost didn't recover the punt and Alabama would have gotten the ball and probably won the game. So just a critical moment that would have changed the trajectory of his life, unfortunately, probably for the worse, in terms of the criticism from social media. But again, like, these are just moments in time. It's not definite.
Right.
There's always going to be room to move on. And more importantly, as a human, like, at the end of its performance, like, you're obviously more than that, as tough as it might be.
Yep. I think it's important, again, team, I'm going to bring you back to, again, I lived in Los Angeles, and Craig, clearly just mentioned that he's not going to be old enough to remember this, but I had some celebrity clients that had the same PR people as Hugh Grant. And if you remember Hugh Grant, he was dating this beautiful, who was the
Elizabeth Hurley.
Elizabeth Hurley. And he was actually caught on Sunset Boulevard with a prostitute, for a woman for hire, and he came under the gun on that. But what he did is he went on the Today Show or the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson or Jay Leno and just addressed it, said, this is what happened, this is what I did. And then anytime someone tried to bring it up again, he goes, look, I already talked about that, let's move forward. So I think that you're not going to, now in the day of social media, you're not going to be able to hide from it. My suggestion is to own it. Say, yep, that was a hell of an experience, but that's the world of sports. You win some, you learn some. I'm moving on. So
treat yourself, more importantly, because again, the natural instincts are going to be critical, and how do we bring a bit more warmth and kindness is as hard as it might be.
Yep. And then there's going to be another sporting event the following week or the week after that that's going to replace your hiccup. Well, this is awesome, team. We want to be respectful of your time as well as Craig's time, but what we want to do now is take this opportunity to let Craig, let the audience know where they could reach out to you, whether it's a website and your social media handles or an email.
Yeah, I think the best place is just LinkedIn, just my full name. Feel free to connect and shoot me a message, and would love to chat more about mental performance, working with athletes, and just performers in general. So really would love to connect. So just shoot me a message and can go from there.
Awesome. That's fantastic, team. Thanks so much for joining us. Keep the questions coming in. Definitely reach out to Craig as needed. We have a number of questions that keep coming through. Some of the questions are challenging, like I mentioned today, and other questions need some room for improvement, like we all do. So, team, we'll see you next week on 15 Minutes of Fame. Craig, Aaron, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yep.